Have you ever noticed how much we see in media, TV, movies, women fighting against each other? And I remember as a young girl learning pretty early on that women were not always friends, but sometimes competition. It's time to change that and really understand how women can empower each other. Welcome to the Satisfied Woman podcast. I'm your host, Alanna Kaivalya. This podcast is dedicated to helping women lean into their femininity and rediscover the power of their feminine gifts. We take a look at what it means to be a modern woman and how we can live a satisfied life on our own terms. Visit the hub at thesatisfiedwoman.com. I feel so bummed. I hate to start the podcast that way, but in thinking about this particular topic, how women can empower other women, how women can help each other to succeed, what I realized is that there is so much narrative and assumptions and training working against us. As young kids, as children, we naturally play with one another. We play with people of the same gender. We play with people of the opposite gender without any issue. And it's right around age 7 or 8. And this is actually a worldwide phenomenon. This isn't just in Western culture or anywhere specific. Worldwide, children play with each other with no issue until about the age of 7 or 8. And that's when they start to self-differentiate based on gender. Little girls play with little girls, and little boys play with little boys. And again, this is a worldwide phenomenon. We are not entirely sure what the mechanism for this is, what trips that switch, but we do observe it, and we just know this at this time to be a true fact. When little girls start to play with each other, they test each other socially and emotionally throughout their early childhood years, throughout their teenage years. And then at some point, they shift into realizing that we don't help each other, at least in this culture, at least with the current narrative. Women are set up to work against each other and to also have to work against other men. Because of our masculine culture, all of the terms of success and all of the terms of what makes a successful life are judged and written by the masculine culture, not the feminine culture. So we've got several things working against us here. We've got men who have decided that they want to rise up the corporate and social ladder, that they want to have a keeping up with the Joneses kind of mentality, and the patriarchy has established itself that way. Now, what I don't want to do in saying something like that is vilify every man. This isn't every man. This is the men who participate unconsciously in the current cultural paradigm, perhaps, and even women also who participate unconsciously in the current cultural paradigm. This is just how things have been set up for us here in the West over the last several thousand years, and also in recent history, in recent generations, especially with the rise of the industrial age, with the rise of commodification, with the rise of how we spend money, how we achieve the American dream. Growing up in America, being an American myself, I certainly grew up with the narrative that to work as hard as possible and achieve as much as possible is what the goal is. It's, again, that keeping up with the Joneses mentality. Do you have as much or more than your neighbor? And what's yours is yours. I remember hearing growing up a lot of this idea that possession is 9/10 of the law. What we own really makes us who we are. So that is very much a masculine idea, this idea of collecting things, of having things ourselves and not sharing them. The feminine idea is quite different. In a feminine culture, in a feminine world, in femininity, the ideals are of collaboration, contribution, sharing, support, nourishment, as well as to some extent nurturing, but definitely nourishment, this idea of receiving, this idea of being open and receptive, of having everyone around you and everyone benefiting from who you are, what you do, what you have to contribute, receiving things from others. This is a feminine way of being, and it's not really allowed in most places and spaces and cultural milieus and communities and organizations, you name it. Now, I wish that were not true, and I actually write this in my book, that I would love to have an example of a place where collaboration, community, people working together is really the norm and is really successful. And I don't doubt that there are some. I have just looked far and wide and haven't really found any that don't turn into something that engenders more competition or haves versus have-nots. We have some work to do and a ways to go before we shift our cultural paradigm and our perceptions into being something a little more collaborative and community oriented. Now, what this does for the feminine woman living in this more masculine paradigm of competition, trying to achieve more than another, trying to work against another, is a few things. Number one, it tells us something that's against our core understanding, which is that resources are scarce. Now, for the true feminine, that is never the case. For the true feminine, the feminine in its purest form and its essential core, it is resourceful. It is resourced. It is always receiving what it needs. If we had to assign one word to describe femininity, it would be receptive. Now, you can't be receptive in a vacuum. You can't be receptive where there is nothing to receive. The feminine, in its core essence, is able to simply open itself and always receive the nourishment and the resources it needs. And so in that mindset, in that world, in that culture, in that community, in that job, in that family, in that relationship, in that friendship, resources are never lacking. They are always available. And if they don't seem obvious, it doesn't mean that they're not there. So if resources are always available, but we live in a culture that tells us that they're not, that's going to jam us up. And that's going to really put us not only at odds with our fellow woman, but with ourselves. We are going to believe that resources are scarce, that there is lack, that we have to fight one another for the resources that are available, that we have to hold on to and not share the resources that we have. This is a skewed and distorted understanding of the way that not only the world works, but the way that masculinity works. Masculinity is generative. Masculinity in its essence is supportive. Masculinity in its essence is nurturing. Okay? Nurturing, I know, is often thought of as a feminine quality. It's actually a masculine quality. To nurture something is to provide what it needs for further growth and development. That is inherently a masculine quality. The masculine is the provider. The masculine provides whatever is needed for the growth and development of what the masculine cherishes, which in its perfect form, and again, we're talking about kind of the essence of the energies here. The masculine in its perfect form provides and nurtures what it most cherishes, and what the masculine always most cherishes is the feminine. And the feminine is the receiver, the aggregator of this nurturance, and so is nourished. The feminine is nourished by all these resources that come its way and feed it for the pleasure, benefit, and uplifting energy of everything and everyone else in its path. So this is a cycle. This is kind of a feedback system, and it's a beautiful feedback system, and it's meant to work that way, where no one is lacking. That the masculine can provide and nurture, the feminine can receive and nourish. We operate in that paradigm. There is no lack, and everyone benefits. Now, unfortunately, we have to look at reality, and we live in a culture where that is not the kind of mindset that everyone is in. I wish it were. We're going to get there. We're working on it. That's the work that we're doing here together on the podcast. That's the work that I am attempting to do here in The Satisfied Woman and with my book, The Way of the Satisfied Woman. But I know what we're working against. I know what we're up against. because I've been raised in it, I've lived it, I've operated in it, I've been hoodwinked by it, and it's time to shift things and do things differently. And one of the most basic places that we can do that is to do it with each other as women. To realize that we're not in competition with each other, that actually all of us as women here, we all have it hard. We've all grown. Being a woman in the world is dangerous. Any way you look at it, culturally, psychologically, physically, emotionally, it can be a dangerous place. Now, I want us all to find places, spaces, families, anywhere we are, that are safe, that are nourishing, that are abundant, that make us really feel and lean into our full capacity as feminine women. And one of the first places and ways we can do that is for and with each other. We do not have to compete with one another for resources. We do not have to compete with one another for jobs. We do not have to compete with one another for relationships. This is one of the first places I see in media and TV, in movies, in stories, this idea that, if he's mine, if I can't have him, you can't have him. There are entire series dedicated to this concept that women have to own their man and fight for their man. There are songs dedicated to this. It doesn't need to be that way. There are plenty of people out there, and the one for you is going to fight for you, not the other way around. That's my 2 cents about it. We don't need to get into a relationship discussion necessarily, but we can drop anywhere possible this narrative, this BS, this belief system that we have to fight for anything, really, in this world. I think the biggest thing worth fighting for is our own self and our own femininity and our own ability to be safe and cherished in our feminine. And by fighting for ourselves, by standing up for ourselves, we will create that perfect feminine receptacle. Again, that receiving energy where those who want to cherish us, those who want to support us, those who want to nourish us will appear. Now, this isn't magical thinking. I'm not going into the whole law of affirmations or the secret kind of concepts. I don't think that if we just sit back and become receptive, that our world will become perfect and everyone will just arrive. We have to put the work in to do that. And part of the work is to start supporting other women. Statistically, if we look at how it works when women do this, so if we look at this in business, women-owned businesses statistically reinvest in their communities as opposed to reinvesting in themselves. Women-owned businesses are notorious. They are known for reinvesting in the people that work with them and for them, reinvesting in the communities that they live in. When women are empowered and are successful on their own terms, they make everyone around them empowered and successful. This is the true feminine. This is how women operate. When women make decisions in their communities, in their businesses, in their lives, in their families, they don't do it unilaterally. Okay, that's masculine. Masculine is leadership. And again, leadership is necessary in certain times, in certain places, and it's great. We totally need leaders. Yes, yay to leaders. However, for women, that idea is empowerment, and instead of leadership, it's collaboration. Women don't make unilateral decisions. They make decisions that benefit everyone around them through conversation and through making sure that their decisions are the best possible decisions for everyone that those decisions may affect, at least to the best extent that they can. Now, that's not necessarily a valued quality in the way that traditional business is run here in our current cultural paradigm. For a woman, let's say, to go into a boardroom, sit down and say, all right, everybody, what is the best thing for us? What would you like to do today? What is the best decision here? How do we advance the company? What are all your ideas? Let's brainstorm. That is thought of as weak. Whereas as a woman going into a boardroom who says, all right, here's what we're going to do. Here's the way we need to do it. This is the decision we're making. This is the best way forward. That's either seen as leadership or as bitchy. But what that is masculine. And that's how business is traditionally done. When a man walks into a boardroom and says, all right, here's the decision, here's what we're doing, he's seen as a leader, he's seen as the boss, and the ones around him say, yes, let's do that, we follow you. Now, following a leader or following a boss is not a bad idea, provided that the leader or the boss is making the best decisions possible for those in his care or stewardship. This also is the same for families, for communities. So if, let's say, there's a masculine leader of a household, that masculine leader can make decisions for the good of the household, and the household may choose to follow that leader's direction, provided they also believe those decisions are for the highest good of everyone in the household. It doesn't necessarily need to be collaboration all the time, but if it is a feminine-led household, then collaboration is key. Now, I wouldn't say collaboration is king, I would say collaboration is queen, but that's how then decisions are made. It doesn't have to be one or the other all the time. There's reasons to switch back and forth. I'm not trying to ascribe any kind of tradition or new pathway. You need to decide what's right for you in terms of how you move forward in families and your relationships in your community. But what I want to do is highlight that one is not better than the other, and that the feminine way of doing things has been overlooked and swept under the rug and devalued for too long. And when women collaborate and use this kind of mutually empowered decision making, it's not weak. It's incredibly powerful, and it serves all those around them. So women, when they are in their strong feminine, inherently empower other women and create communities where everyone benefits. We can look around the world and know this to be true, whether it be from smaller populations or tribal populations, all the way up to women-owned businesses, women-owned small businesses, women-owned big businesses, women-led families. Anywhere we look where women are empowered in their feminine, they are empowering other women and those around them. That is what we do. That is who we are. Now, we have to recognize we may be fighting this uphill battle because we do live in a masculine culture. We may be employed in businesses that are masculine style businesses, where to walk into a boardroom and try to collaborate with everyone is seen as weak. Heavy sigh. It doesn't make it right. It just makes it what it is. We have to know what we're dealing with. And in those situations where being in our feminine is seen as weak, we will feel that sense that resources are scarce, that our femininity is our weakness, and we have to compete in a masculine way to achieve, to overcome. What I want for all of us is not success. The masculine seeks success in more that unilateral fashion, in that leadership fashion, in that competition fashion, where they compete with others to achieve a really defined goal. And that is awesome. I'm not taking away from that, and I'm certainly not vilifying that. But what the feminine needs and wants and desires is not success on a man's terms, but rather satisfaction on a woman's terms. And satisfaction is fulfillment. It is defined specifically as the fulfillment of our wishes and needs. And when the feminine's needs and wishes are fulfilled, what's fascinating is that it's not just about her. It's not just about her. It's not in a vacuum. When the wishes and needs of the feminine are fulfilled, it actually serves and benefits all those around her. It is good not just for her, but for the world. So if you've ever received the admonishment of being selfish as a woman because you're asking for your needs and your wishes to be fulfilled, and I say that because I know that that is common. I know that that is one more way that that others attempt to control us by calling us selfish for having needs, for having wishes at all, for trying to fulfill them. It's actually the opposite of that. Having the wishes and needs of the feminine fulfilled not only leads to satisfaction, which is what the feminine inherently desires, it benefits all those around her. So we can start small. If you are listening to this podcast, if you identify as a feminine woman, if you have grown up in a culture that values the masculine more highly than the feminine, if you have ever felt at odds with your fellow woman, if you have ever felt that masculine drive towards success that just feels uncomfortable, if you've ever had to walk into a room of people and unilaterally make a decision and that has felt off to you, there is a different way to do things. And it is your way. It is the feminine way. It is the way that feeds not only your soul, but the world and the people around you. That's where we shine. That's where we all not only succeed, but find satisfaction. And that is what I wish for all of us, is to lead a satisfied life, to feel satisfied, to become satisfied women. Because when women are satisfied, we are empowered and we empower others. So together we succeed. So drop that old narrative that there is competition. Drop that old narrative that there is a lack of resources. The feminine is resourceful, and when we tap into that receptivity, we receive what we need. We open ourselves up to possibilities. We find the people, places, things, communities that help us lean into our femininity. We find that masculine that cherishes who we are. And in doing so, we allow that femininity to be powerful, to shine, and to serve the world. So, to you, my fellow satisfied woman, I am with you. I'm here for you on this path, and I'm doing everything I can to help show you a different way to be and the best way to be, which is yourself as a feminine woman. So thank you for listening to the podcast. I look forward to being with you on the next one. And until then, please visit the hub at thesatisfiedwoman.com. I'll see you there.